Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention, maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. Hey everybody, how's it going? Usually I'm telling you about a short intro. This one's going to be a bit more medium. This podcast I'm releasing now recorded on May 8th with a gentleman named Mitchel Ricegraph and a young lady named Paulette Nobles. Paulette's was a driver for a company called Hirschbach Transport, a pretty major trucking company in the United States, and they are a partner carrier with Aurora Innovation. In fact, if I have this correct, Aurora's announced first week of driver out of actually running an autonomous driverless truck down an American interstate with no driver was pulling a Hirschbach trailer. That was on April 30th, I think they announced that, or maybe May 1st. I recorded this on May 8th, and then a few days later, Aurora made this peculiar announcement that they were putting a safety driver back in. I mean, they had a driver in the truck. I guess there was always somebody in the truck, in the bunk. That's where they were getting some of their footage. Someone was actually running a camera in the bunk of the truck, but not sitting in the driver's seat. Make of that what you will. But PACCAR, the people who make Peterbilts, the once marquee name, the trucks that have basically, they all look like shit now, just like everybody else's. There's no more good-looking trucks, sorry. PACCAR was one of the last holdouts, but, they've caved to the government and their aerodynamic stupidity in service of climate alarmism and other baloney that we don't need if you just drive slow. There's other ways to be efficient, but anyway, that's another conversation. Yeah, Peterbilt demanded that a safety driver resume operation, and that seems to be an interesting development. I've written about that. There's going to be a link to a Substack article. There's a whole bunch of links in the show notes on this one, guys. So much has happened in the last month between driver out, driver back in. A sort of an investment capital research group did a bit of a deep dive on Aurora and their analysis and assessment of where Aurora is at as far as a successful investment vehicle is an interesting read, to say the least. And then we have this interview with Mitchel and Paulette, and all of this has happened in the last month. I feel bad for not getting this out earlier, but now I don't. There's lots going on, and maybe it was a benefit for me to not get around to editing this until now. Life's very busy, and as you know, I'm trying to write a book, and kids, and life, and wife, and my wife is overcommitted. My family situation's very, very busy, so it's been difficult for me to get this stuff out. As you know, one-man show. I do all the writing, producing, recording, editing, marketing. This is completely 100% on me. I don't make any money from this podcast. It's a gift to my fellow drivers. I mean, I suppose you could go to subscribe to my Substack or chip into my book, givesendgo.com/end-of-the-road-book-project if you felt like chipping in. But yeah, no, this is a passion project, and therefore it often gets put to the bottom of the priority list when other stuff has to happen. Check the show notes. There's a whole bunch of information if you're following me about autonomous truck development, specifically with Aurora. I'm going to share a link with you these guys talking about platooning, which, as you've probably heard me say, is the fake and gay version of road trains. The tech bros just wave their magic tech wand. Ooh, look at this. And then in Australia, they've been doing platooning for 60 years without any robot trucks and doing just fine. Thank you very much. Various states in the U.S. have turnpike doubles. B-trains in Canada, turnpike doubles in Canada. None of this stuff is new or exciting. Platooning is just a fancy way to get them to have another truck involved and then sell you that truck and make a bunch of money when it's completely unnecessary. or concerns autonomous trucks. Don't buy it. It's nonsense. They're called road trains. Trucks can do this already. You don't need extra trucks. You just need a well-equipped tractor unit and a high-skilled driver to drive it, and you can do it. Ask Australia. All right, Mitchell and Paulette gave me, a solid 90 minutes of their insight. The conversation kind of goes towards some of the sort of AI, the other stuff going on in trucks that involves automation and AI, specifically the surveillance technology. There are driver-facing camera systems and other camera systems that they have on the trucks at Hirschbach and at the place Mitchell works, where they're scraping data of you driving the truck and then using that to train the systems which are going to run the automated and driverless trucks. And you just have no choice on it. So if you're a driver who's working for one of these companies with one of these driver-facing cameras in it, you very well are a guinea pig in this experiment, and they're scraping your data. They're using your every move, your eye movements, your driving behavior, everything you do in order to teach the computers that are going to replace you. I don't know how you guys would feel about that, but I certainly, I already had my run-in with a driver-facing camera at the same company I've only ever been fired from, ELD, all that bullshit, and I don't know how you guys do it. It certainly wouldn't be me. Anyhow, enough from me. Mitchell and Paulette are full of wisdom. They've both been, researching the implementation of autonomous trucks. Paulette's witnessed it firsthand working for this, major partner carrier to Aurora. And I think this is going to be a very informative conversation for my listeners. Go to the show notes, check out all the links, read all my linked articles. There's a video from previous frequent guest of the show, James Year, who's been investigating the implementation of autonomous technology now for about 4 years or more. He was just involved with these guys called More Perfect Union, who are a sort of working class advocacy media organization. And he did a little short documentary with them. It's not quite 14 minutes long. I shared it in my previous Substack, and the links to that will be in the show notes. Go check it out. James has been doing the hard yards of documenting all of this stuff. He's a great source of information. Go to his website, stealingfire.tech or jamesyear.com. He's also on Instagram. All the links will be down there. James is coming back on the show very soon to tell us what he's learned since his last trip down to Texas and documenting the launch of these driverless trucks. All right, let's get to Mitchell and Paulette and Hirschbach and Aurora. All right, g'day everybody. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Voice of Gord podcast. I'm Gord, and this is my voice. The other voices you're going to hear today, and there are two of them, are some associates of mine I met through CDL Drivers Unlimited, a driver advocacy organization that seems to be on the back burner at the moment. Anyhow, they, like myself and some other of my colleagues, have been focusing their attention as of late on the issue of automated trucks and the technology systems and the implications of their imposition onto the roads in America. I'm finding both of these wonderful people out on the highway, one ending his day and the other starting hers on a night shift. So the other voices you're about to hear are of Mr. Mitchell Riesgraf, driver at Long Haul Trucking out of Minnesota, and Ms. Paulette Nobles, who drives for Hirschbach Transport and who will be the sort of focus of our discussion here. Yeah, so we've been talking a little bit back and forth because one of the beats of this podcast is the automated stuff. I've had a number of repeat guests on that issue over the years, James Year and Will Cook, and I write a little bit about it here and there. And Hirschbach is going to come in for some examination and criticism because, as Paulette is going to tell us, they are one of the first partner carriers to work with one of the sort of market leaders, as it were, in the space of automated driver systems. And that's Aurora Innovation, who I've written a couple of articles about. And I've tried to get on this show and I've tried to offer to interview them for my Substack, and they always never get back to me, even after I met one of their representatives in person at F3, the Freightwaves party down in Tennessee. I got to meet a couple other people at Matt's last year in 2024. I wrote about that. They tried to hire my buddy James Year, which I think was a ruse in an effort to get him to sign an NDA because James knows too much. And apparently, Paulette, you know quite a bit as well. So we'll start with you.
Well, I know quite a bit just because I've read. Hirschbach has been quiet about it. They haven't really said anything to the drivers or anything. They came out here about 2 days ago and finally admitted to the drivers that they have a working relationship with Aurora. And they said that they've been doing it for years with Aurora. And so that's, I don't know how many of the drivers have actually watched the video that Hirschbach put out about that. But yeah, they've been keeping it hush hush for quite a while. But they finally came out and said that they did it. They're all excited about it, that it's going to, make trucking better. Of course, they got to spin it to make it so it's going to make our drivers' lives easier, which is, nonsense. But what I found out looking into this is one of the CEOs, we have two CEOs, Brad something or another, I can never pronounce his last name, and then Richard Stocking, who came from Swift. And Richard Stocking is on the advisory board for Aurora, which, I think is, a conflict of interest, but whatever. And so he's been really pushing all of this, since he came on board with Hirschbach, probably about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And in that time, we've always had driver facing cameras. And in September of 2024, we got AI technology in our cameras. So now they tell you, like, if they think you're distracted or whatever, don't wear your seatbelt. It's all kind of nonsense. And
what do you mean? What do you mean by tell you? Does a little robot voice, or is it somebody watching you?
So it's a robot voice that says that says, "Oh, you're distracted." And if you get told 3 times in, I think it's 10 minutes or some shit like that, then you get a write-up from your dispatcher, and you can be fired after so many write-ups. But it watches you. Like if you're sleepy, it'll tell you that. A lot of times, like if you wear an orange shirt, the safety orange t-shirt, it'll tell you you're not wearing a seatbelt because their seatbelts are orange and it doesn't see it. It just like all blends in. So, I mean, there's a lot of, and I've talked to women here at Hirschbach, and if they're well endowed in the chest, sometimes the seatbelt gets hidden and then it tells them, they're not wearing seatbelts. But looking into this, and this started in September, and I was like, okay, this is nonsense. If we got this going on, there's a reason, and it's not to make us feel safer and all this nonsense like they try to promote. It's so we can self-correct our errors and so they don't have to do it for us. Well, I've been talking to an AI specialist, and she doesn't work in trucking. To be fair, she works for a university, but she's got a master's degree in AI technology. And she was telling me odds are right now, a lot of this AI is actually people sitting there watching you. And she said probably India, as they program AI to start looking at stuff. So
right. Well, the AI has to be taught. Here's the thing, right? Like it's built into the name. I share this little meme on Twitter quite often, and all it is a screenshot from a friend of mine back home in Canada. He sent me this text message after a conversation we had about this technology, and this is a while back. This is like 2018 or 19 or something. And my buddy's a bit of a funny, smart bastard. He's got a double major in philosophy and political science from the Memorial University of Newfoundland. he's a newfie and he's an oddball and he's a really funny guy. And the text message says, artificial intelligence is called artificial intelligence because it's fucking fake. It's right there in the name. And the fact that nobody picks up on this proves the profound autism of the entire project. And what he's getting at with that text message is that it is indeed fake. Artificial intelligence is something we built. You get into it with the real deep AI guys, and they'll tell you the same thing. And it has to be taught, right?
Right.
So if and getting back to like I hate talking about gender or identity stuff, but you did mention women drivers. There was an Instagram or TikTok video that went viral a couple of years ago because this woman driver for some company in Tennessee had figured out that like guys, because they were like sending her messages or something, and she figured like they were watching her. It wasn't just like, oh, the camera got set off because they hit a bump or she hit the brakes too hard. Like they were turning it on and looking at her. And it just doesn't surprise me that you guys are being used as guinea pigs, and an office full of subcontinentals are sitting there doing all the data entry about what you're doing and what the AI is supposed to pick up. Like, I'm totally not surprised.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the thing is, we also have the dash cams, incorporated into our camera. So every mile we drive, that view of the traffic around us and our decisions that we make is also being used to program the autonomous truck.
Right,
Now,
you're teaching your replacement.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I haven't figured out yet if Hirschbach is selling the data to Aurora or if they're just giving it to them, for discounts later on down the road or whatever. I don't know how they're doing it. I do know that they are sharing the data with Aurora. And right now, Aurora, in fact, their maiden flag voyage, they just came out and did a
They announced that
press
last
release.
week. Yeah.
Yeah, and Hirschbach was the first carrier to go fully autonomous between Dallas and Houston. And I've come to find out that the lane that the Aurora is using, and then the second lane that they're going to use, I believe, is like Dallas to El Paso. Richard Stocking, the CEO and president of Hirschbach, set those up personally himself. He made the lanes for Aurora.
Yeah, there's something there, we'll set aside the Hirschbach thing here for a second, but there's something deeply offensive to the human spirit by what you just said, that they are having this technology in your trucks now, all these sensor suites, all these AI watching you guys, and they're teaching Aurora's technology by you guys driving.
Right.
That's that like any person who hears that, like there's been some discussions over the years about insourced labor in all fields, like not just trucking, like all kinds of fields of endeavor. And I've seen reports here and there of people like working at a factory somewhere, and then like some dude shows up from India or Haiti, and then the factory worker is told, you're going to train this guy, and then you're out there in at like half the cost. And I mean that sucks. That sucks really bad. But it's even worse when it's a robot. Like you don't even have like a human to blame or get mad at. It's just technology. It's just some ghost.
Right. It's crazy to me, because I watch, because there are several different companies playing around with this technology, and they're all running these and testing these trucks in the southern states where there's not inclement weather, and I drive one of these Hirschbach trucks, and we've got Bendix systems all over. Well, in the wintertime, you get salt or ice on the front of that radar. Your truck goes haywire. You got to pull over and clean off your radars. So they haven't even tried to look at it, what's going to happen in the wintertime.
I've heard from one of my associates that they are doing testing in inclement weather in secret. They haven't told anybody about it yet. Like, he's heard whispers about this. I have no way of confirming that. Again, I've tried to invite Aurora and I don't know one of the other companies to come talk to me, and they won't because I guess they just figure I'm a wild card and I'll ask them the wrong questions and I'm not just going to softball it, right? So why would they talk to me? Speaking of talking, Mitchell, you've been very patient waiting back there, buddy. What have you got to contribute here?
Yeah, so what I've got to contribute is just to give a little bit of background on how I'm included with this and working with Paulette kind of on this, it's an unofficial project, but it's kind of an official project. So we go back to talking about when CDLDU was in full fire. I volunteered to work as the Iowa State um kind of leader basically for when we were working on the driver advocacy network, and we were going to build a whole like state by state leaders and try to build the leadership of the organization. And I was assigned to start working with Paulette because of her working at Hirschbach and the whispers of the AI cameras coming into the mega carriers at that time. And this was kind of in early 2023, and you started seeing more and more carriers. The carrier I was at the time was Night Transportation, who was working with and then had backed out of working with Embark, and now they have gone to using Netrodyne cameras, which is funny because earlier on, in 2023, when I had joined up with CDLDU, we had a full-blown interview, myself, Lee Schmidt, and David Heffernan. No, not David, but Jim Heffernan, the co-founder of CDLDU. And we had a full-blown interview with a lot of the developers at Netrodyne. And, I was talking about this subject about, but wait a minute, we're introducing AI into these cameras, not just to watch the drivers to make sure that we're held accountable, but what's going on with that data and who's it being sold to? And they didn't want to answer that question. And I says, now, wait a second, those things, taking information and data that should be the drivers because the driver's included in it. I mean, it's filming me. So why shouldn't I have rights to that data? I don't remember signing anything when I started saying that,
I
I
was
was
about to
relinquishing my
I
rights.
was about to ask you that. And
Hmm.
Paulette, I want you to chime in on this too.
And
Did
they
you
were
did
using Smart Drive.
did
So
did,
yeah, go
did
ahead.
were either of you ever asked any drivers you worked with ever presented with like a contract or a form from the company saying, by the way, you're being filmed, your personal visage, your work you're putting in the truck, your actions, everything you do is being taken, studied, analyzed, and like shunted off to this other company. Like, were you guys ever informed or asked for permission?
So
No,
yeah, go ahead, Paulette.
no. In fact, Hirschbach, when we first had the cameras, they told us, and this is the nonsense that they spew. And if you stop and you think about it logically, it just makes no damn sense. They said the cameras do not record us while we're driving. However, if we have an incident like an accident or hard braking, that it will record 12 seconds before the incident and 30 seconds after the incident and send it to the company, which would be Hirschbach in my case. Now, how can you record the past?
Because you're always recording. It's always recording.
Right, right. But they tell you it doesn't record
Right. They
unless
they
you have an
outright
incident.
lie.
Yeah,
They
you
outright
can't
lie.
record.
And the most of these contracts, if you don't mind me interjecting here, Paulette, these contracts when you're being employed by a mega carrier who, they all, from what I've heard and seen and had drivers share with me about their contracts, asking, different questions about their contracts as a driver advocate, I help out, is that these ATA companies, they utilize a very similar contract, most of them. And it's just that, they're making you aware that you're being recorded and you're acknowledging that there's an inward facing camera, outward facing camera. And So it's like this general consent, but there's nothing about, okay, how is that data being utilized that I'm a part of? And because that data includes me, like I said, I presented the question to Netrodyne, don't you believe that then that driver should own the rights to that data? Because they had a system of that AI was creating driver profiles, and they had brought up the fact that, oh, that driver could take it with them to this, and it says, oh, so that means the driver has all the rights to that data then. And they kind of started stumbling on that whole factor. Yes, you have rights to take it with you to prove the safety sake of how you drive and how it grades you, but you don't have the controlling interest that who is that information being sold to. And now Night Transportation is now using Netrodyne cameras. They were using Smart Drive when I was with them, which is a much more simple AI, but it had a similar driver profile that grades you based upon how the AI sees that you drive. The lower the score, the better. Netrodyne's is the higher the score, the better. It's a descending process versus an inclining process. So, there is no asking you to waive your rights or anything like that to the data and information.
Yeah, that's interesting. So basically, you're guinea pigs that didn't ask to be guinea pigs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, exactly. And when Hirschbach rolled out the AI camera in September of 2024, they just did it and they didn't make an announcement. I mean, we were driving down the road and all of a sudden, your camera's talking to you and you're like, what the hell? And then like 2 days later, they're like, oh, by the way, we now put AI in the cameras.
It's been there the entire time.
Wow,
You know,
this is some HAL 9000 shit from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Are you guys familiar with that movie?
Yeah. I get your reference point, and like so same thing with me at like right now here at Long Haul. Like they have a Linux camera in here, but they say, well, we've opted out of the AI features of it. And for the most part, I mean, there's times where I'm surprised it didn't bark at me, but obviously they're not watching, and Long Haul professedly says that we opt out of the AI part of it because we don't feel that's fair to the drivers. We feel it's aggravating. If it is always recording, but we're only going to look at it if you have a worthy incident. Otherwise, we don't want to know your business,
Does
you know.
anybody else feeling like there's a slippery slope thing going on here where it's like, well, it's just a Qualcomm, we're just going to send you messages. Well,
Yeah.
it's just going to like monitor, there's a GPS component to it, and we're just going to monitor your fuel mileage, and we're going to have this thing help you, and
Yeah.
you're going to get better shifting, and and then, well, no, it's just an ELD. It's just going to help you track your logbooks. And no, this camera, it's just to like protect you in case you get in an
Right.
accident. No,
Right.
we're not using AI while we're watching you. Like every single step of the way here with this shit, it just goes further and further down the slope. But
Exactly, it does. And then they'll use the human error of the driver to prove case in point that, well, we weren't doing it before, but now we've got to start doing it because safety scores and blah 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 and policy changes and all this. They'll use as an excuse to further weaponize the technology against the drivers. And that's exactly what it is. They call a spade a spade. It is weaponization that it puts a shackling environment that you mentioned Space Odyssey. I've mentioned when we've talked privately about George Orwell. It feels like I'm like every day I'm down the road. It feels further and further like I'm living in a version of 1984. Just trying to do my job.
one of the things that I've repeated a few times in my writings in various places, is that there's an understanding of trucking and truckers, like truck driver, the job, the occupation, sort of, trucker qua trucker, not like just one trucker, but all of us and our understanding of what that is and the archetype. um it's sort of built around the idea of the sort of, it's archetypal because it's sort of the last, you know vestigial jobs or identities that's like part of what America's supposed to be. If you like the sort of like rugged individualist, going out
Absolutely.
there against the frontier, setting his own path, doing his own thing, trying to do
Yeah.
right by his family, and like it's fucking gone, man. Like
It's disappearing.
truck
Yeah.
drivers went from being the like the last American cowboy freedom of the road to they're just putting cameras in the trucks, and they've got the trucks are so full of technology now that they're studying your every move to teach the truck to drive by itself without you. And then like once we're all done here, like maybe you'll get UBI or something. One of the things, so I'm gonna get to back to the Hirschbach thing. I watched that video you guys sent me, and um, uh, four drivers for Hirschbach. They're like driving around and like getting shown how the Aurora driver works. And at the beginning of the film, they're sitting around this table, I guess maybe a driver's room or meeting room or something. They've all got their safety vests on. I'm gonna have a rant about safety vests here or somewhere. Um, and one of the Aurora guys that was in that video is the dude I met at Future of Freight Festival down in Chattanooga, and got his card and invited him on this show. And he's one of the guys that said, he just never answered me. Bonehead Truckers, the YouTube channel, did a review of that. Somehow those guys got a copy. And, what was it they said? Like, here's these drivers yucking it up with the people that are going to replace them. Yeah, I got that vibe too.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's comical.
well, Hirschbach has this thing they call it the driver advocacy board, and it's 15 drivers. And anything they want to do, they go to these 15 drivers and say, "What do you think the rest of the fleet's going to think?" Well, these four here, one of them I don't like. I've never met him, but I have heard a lot about him, and I don't like his attitude. But one of the drivers was given a few years ago, a couple of years ago, I believe it was. He was given a brand new truck, and it's wrapped, based on his military service in the Navy, and so he just thinks everything that Hirschbach does is the best thing in the world. And he's definitely a company man through and through. And these guys, they're just clueless. They're just ensuring their jobs. They don't care.
Yeah.
They're gonna be
I
the
can
last rats off the ship.
I can
Yeah.
expand more on this, and this I guess comes because I've seen a bit of a similarity between the cultural aspects of what over the time I've known Paulette and seen of their internal videos versus what I was also seeing at another mega carrier when I was with Knight. And it's the same thing like, oh, it's okay because see, we're just going with these more different autonomous features because we want them to assist you. No, you want to make our skills valueless. So you can try to put any dummy behind the wheel that you've now gotten classified as unskilled labor by the Department of Labor, and you can just, like they're doing on all fronts, just trying to replace the drivers.
De-skilling is a very good way of
Right.
putting it, Mitchell.
And for me and like yourself, Gord, we both have something in common about the multi-generational and trucking. That's like an important part of our identity. Like I can't even, in my side of the family, it's the blue collar. You either work on the farm and learn the farm life, or you're the one driving the truck for the farm, or you just kind of go out into trucking. And I fell right into that because just nothing else fit. Dad tried to send me off to mechanics, and I went with that for a little while and got lost in a couple other things, and I got back into this. And after, Dad had me in the truck when I was younger, and it was like, this is where I'm at. This is a part of my identity. And I feel like that part of my identity and that part of what makes me an American is just made to be valueless to society. That's the picture we're painting, or we're being painted as the scum of society, but yet the country depends upon what we do. Without us, you don't have a country to
Right.
begin with.
Yeah, on that sort of spiral, one of the things that drives me nuts about this, and I was asked about this by a journalist friend of mine who's doing a presentation next week with the Department of Labor. We'll save any info on that until it actually happens. But, they say that there's this like feedback loop where they say, well, we need safer drivers, we can't get good drivers, but they keep scraping the bottom of the human resources barrel, because what they really don't want to do is keep or enhance or make things better for the good drivers they already have and improve the job to keep a better quality of person, right? A lot of people who are in trucking are in it because they like it, and a lot of people are in trucking because they got kicked off of their state welfare or unemployment benefits until they went to go and try and find a job, and they figured truck driving was easy. So we've got this sort of tension between, like, there's a significant minority of the trucking population who are really good at it, really like it, got taught properly, were trained at it, have been at it for years, and they could have more of competent, highly skilled, safe operators, but that means they would have to pay people more. They would
Right.
have to stop treating them like fucking criminals with the video cameras and all this other stuff. And
Right.
every
Right.
time you get back home, you have to have a meeting with some human resources harridan that's never driven a truck before. All these, like,
Yeah.
anti-human and insulting and infantilizing ways they treat us. And then when people make the very logical decision to say fuck this and quit and get out of trucking, we need to find more drivers. And then the drivers they find to replace us are even worse. And then the spiral
Yeah.
goes down, and it's like, okay, cool, I guess we need
Exactly.
automated trucks now. But they've done it to themselves. Like, I got asked by another journalist, what would I say to the government about the imposition of automated trucks? And all I said was, there's nothing I can do about it. I can be as much of a Luddite as I want. Aurora's still going to do what they're going to do, plus AI, Kodiak, all the rest of these characters. I can't stop it, right? But what I can say is this: don't lie to me about what you're doing. Don't lie to the public about what you're doing. Don't lie to your investors. Don't lie to your government. Just come out and say it. Truck drivers in the United States collectively make $200 billion a year in salary. That's the bag you guys are coming for. You don't give a shit about my job. You don't give a shit about safety. You don't give a shit about shit. You have VC investors who are transhumanists and techno-optimists, and they want to play with their toys, and they think that they can get rid of people and they can make money while they're doing it. That's why you're doing it. Just be honest about it. Don't fucking lie to me. And speaking of lies, another thing about the Aurora video, and the other manufacturers say the same shit too. Kodiak, Wabi, they're all singing from the same songbook. Is that we don't want to replace truck drivers. We want to give you better jobs. And one of the Hirschbach guys even repeated it, which I thought was so fucking stupid. Oh yeah, well, there's still going to be jobs for doing pre-trip inspections and hooking stuff up. Okay, cool. You might like that. The vast majority of the really good truckers did not sign up to be yard jockeys, right? We signed up to be OTR truck drivers because we like being on the road and we are good at being on the road. And that is what these people are going to take from us. Don't sit here and tell me that it's a better job if I'm standing around in a yard and hooking trailers up all day. I did that when I was 16, when I was learning this stuff at night after school, right? You're going to tell me that I'm going to wind the clock back 30 years to being a kid working in the yard at night, and that's some kind of an improvement? Fuck you.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
it's how destabilizing it's going to be to so many economies. Like where I'm from in Iowa, like 1 in 9 jobs in Iowa is a CDL job. There's small towns out there, like where I happen to live in one of them in Northwest Iowa, that if I didn't have this trucking job, there's just none of the jobs out there pay worth a damn to keep up with the cost of living. It's one of the last stands many of us have that are in some of these small towns across, rural America in general.
Yeah, and the problem with that is, I talked to one of the safety managers at Hirschbach here a few weeks ago, and he was telling me, because he wanted to know what I thought of the company and all this, and I kind of went off on him. And I told him, I said, this AI stuff, I said, this is nonsense. I said, I'm training my damn replacement. And he goes, well, we've talked to drivers and everyone wants more home time. And this way, if the trucks are doing the long haul, then, you guys will just be doing the final miles. And then I spoke to another person just a couple days ago at Hirschbach, and they were saying that, yeah, they're going to try to set it up down the road to be almost like intermodal, to where, the trailers come into a drop yard and then a driver comes in and then takes it into St. Louis to the DC or into Atlanta to the DC and all that. And as a truck driver, the last thing we want to do is drive in the darn cities. I mean,
there are some people that like that.
Exactly.
Like I'll be fair. There are people that like doing P&D work. They like to sleep in their own beds at night, and they like to play in the truck for 10 or 12 hours a day and go home every day. Good for them. But the thing is about that, on that point, Paulette, and that's a great point you brought up, is that those are the jobs that are hardest to get, because those people have already ascertained that that's what they want to do. And that part of the industry, local trucking, has got way less turnover and has less of a retention problem than the OTR long haul stuff, right? So if they're saying that they're going to hey, give us all these opportunities for local jobs, well, they're most of them are sort of already taken, and good luck. As this technology is implemented. And here's another point I want people to understand. Obviously, the automated systems are going to come for the middle mile, driving straight down the interstate, get off at an exit, there's a hump yard, then a human takes over, right? They're not going to be doing the local P&D right away. They're also not probably going to do hazmats, because the government's probably not going to let them, nor the insurance companies. Specialized stuff like what Lee and Lisa Schmidt do, oversized escorts, that's probably going to have a human for a long time. Logging, off-road, oil field shit. Here's the problem. Economics. As this technology gets implemented, right, and it starts putting the squeeze on all the OTR drivers, oh, shoot, this company's got 300 of these automated trucks now, and there's 300 drivers entering the market looking for something to do. What are they going to do? They're going to try and get jobs hauling hazardous materials or doing oversize or going logging. Some of them. And now when you've got more people entering those markets, what's that going to do? That's going to put wage pressure and rate pressure on those specialized niche stuff, because now there's all these extra people standing around trying to get those jobs, right? So if you think that you're cozy and safe in some niche part of the market, yeah, you might still keep your job, but there's going to be all kinds of price pressure and rate pressure on the job you have, because of everybody flooding out from the automated middle mile stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then you also got the problem, like Mitchell and we live in small towns in the middle of nowhere. We're not near a big city. We would have to, drive an hour or two just to get to the city to get to our job, to drive a truck, in and out of the city all day.
Right. And this is it, is there's a lot of truckers spread across the heartland, right? I think there was a statistic from a few years ago that showed truck driver was the number one occupation for dudes in 29 states. What happens when all of those guys are a significant portion of those guys get laid off?
And I know that local P&D, they don't pay for a lot of money either. So in certain markets, the rate that they make an hour is peanuts compared to what we make in a day.
Yeah, depending on who you work for. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just going to create more and more issues down the road, and they think this is going to be the end all be all of it.
Right. Yeah, it's the culmination of how it affects the greater economy, and it's not just even it's not exactly how it reaches into trucking. It's how it reaches into every other part of the economy that is entertaining the the autonomous. You're playing with the devil's sword, because it's going to root out a lot of options for people, like Paulette was saying, where us commuting to a city job it's not a viable option. And then you say, oh well, then you could always move to make it more fit. No, you can't, because the cost of living, the closer you get to the city, increases. We live out there because that's where it's affordable, to where we can maintain some sort as close to a middle class lifestyle as possible,
Right. But then there's some of us too,
lower.
though, Mitchell, though, that live out in the boonies because we don't want to deal with the city. We don't want to
Exactly.
deal with people. We drive all day. We look at people all day. We just want to go home and not have to
Exactly.
see another person for a weekend. So,
Yeah. And I think it's all a greater reflection, and we've kind of touched on it, as far as a lot of it has to do with the globalist regime. It's so a lot of it that we're seeing is, um I think, the way that they disseminate the information and how it's viewed as a lie is it's it's understandable that it can be viewed that way. To them, though, they do have their ways of telling us. You just have to know how to read between the lines. Like, anybody can go to the World Economic Forum website, and they have a whole web of information. They don't tell you outright, but you have to learn how to, like, understand their double speak, and
well,
they're speaking in a way of wokeism, right? And because we don't understand it, is because we're full of wrong think. We're not thinking about it correctly.
yeah,
So
but that also goes back to corporate double speak. Like Hirschbach,
yeah,
they put out
exactly.
these town hall meetings once a month, right? And a lot of times, I'll watch them, or I'll not really watch them. I'll just kind of listen and have them in the background. And they're like, "Oh, that's on our radar. We're gonna do that. That's on our radar." And I called up corporate. I'm like, "What the hell is this?" I said, "Are you expecting all truck drivers to be stupid?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "On the radar in corporate speak just means it came up in conversation. We don't want to think about it right now, so we're just going to ignore it."
So speaking of Hirschbach and these meetings, just for me and my listeners, how big of a company is Hirschbach? How many power units? How many trailers? How many yards do they have? Facilities?
Okay, so as far as I know, we have 9 terminals. They have quite a few different drop yards across America, but I don't know how many because I don't work OTR. I work on one of the dedicated accounts. So I don't know. We do have, I think it's about 3,000 power units, around 3,600 drivers, and around 5,000 trailers. And those are just Hirschbach trailers because I'm dedicated. I work the Tyson account. So I'm power only. I pull a Tyson trailer. I go to Tyson, pick up a trailer, and go deliver to wherever and return the trailer back to Tyson. And that's all I do. I don't pull a Hirschbach trailer. And there are other accounts. AWG, they pull AWG trailers, and I don't know them all, but yeah, because they got so many different dedicated accounts. And then our pay scales are all different. Every dedicated account has a different pay scale. OTR has a different pay scale. I don't know how payroll keeps up with it all, to be
Right.
Yeah,
fair.
and they've absorbed John Krishner. I mean, their current safer shows, about 2,900, um about 2,900 power units and 2,500 drivers. But I don't know if that's just the entity that is Hirschbach, not the entities that they've absorbed. So the numbers
Right. And
Paulette is saying probably is that.
well, that's their latest marketing off their website. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
But
So
they've absorbed
they're incorporating all of them.
right. And the the original CEO, who's now just a co-CEO, Brad, and I can never think of his last name. I know it starts with a P, and that's all I can remember. His thing was he wants to make Hirschbach the number one reefer company in America. He wants to take the number one spot. But here's the problem. We have an expedited division. We have a division that pulls trailers and does tours like for music and different entertainment industries. And I guess we're getting into a flatbed division. I saw that on their website. I'm like, what the heck? How are we going to be the number one reefer when we're branching out all over the dang place?
Right. Well, I just wanted to get a gauge for how many people they employ, and if they. I just wonder what their sort of strategy is. Like, they've got 3,600 drivers. Maybe not all of them are in particular gigs that are suitable for the implementation of autonomous trucks, but like obviously they're looking at some of it, and like that's that like when. So okay, I'm gonna ask you another question here. So we have these videos that Hirschbach does, their internal sort of promotional videos and meetings and messages from the CEOs, and then there was this ridiculous promo thing with Aurora. Obviously, that's only 4 other drivers in that video, but like, what's the sort of vibe you pick up from other Hirschbach drivers and employees? Like when you're at a yard somewhere or at a Tyson facility, or you meet someone at the truck stop, like how are they feeling about this? Are they talking about it? Do they know? Is there like internal company gossip? Like, what's the word?
Well, I do know, like, okay, so internal gossip with the drivers and office personnel is that nobody likes Richard Stocking, the current CEO and president, and they're all complaining about the changes. Like every account has their own dispatching pod, and it used to be like if you guys did so many loads or whatever, you would get a bonus at the end of the year, the dispatchers. Well, now they've taken that dispatching bonus, and every account across Hirschbach has to meet a certain mark, the whole company, before anybody gets a bonus. And it used to go, like by account. And I know the dispatchers were really, up in arms over that. And drivers are leaving the company left and right. I know a driver who's been with them for, I don't know, 9-10 years. And when these AI cameras came out, he was like, well, I only got 4 more years. I got to tough it out 4 more years, because he's looking at retirement. And then there's other guys who are like, screw it, I'll go somewhere else before I retire. They're tired of these cameras. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of drivers quitting. And it's not just that. I mean, now they're getting really crazy with like micromanagement, and the safety personnel are all over your ass, which to me, they're not safety personnel, they're insurance personnel. That's their main job. It's not about safety, it's about keeping the insurance rates low.
Right. Well, this is it. Like truck drivers are not even looked at as labor anymore in the eyes of a lot of big companies like Hirschbach, and in even smaller companies. Like they literally, like, because of the problem with like lawsuits and nuclear verdicts and insurance payouts, we have gone from being labor to liabilities. Right.
Right.
It's just like, that's the only way you can rationally understand how truck drivers are treated in these organizations anymore, is if you have that framework. Like, we are a liability that they are trying to manage so that they don't get sued, while we are doing the ostensible profit-making thing of moving loads from A to B.
And instead of being viewed as human assets that, as you provide the tools for them to do their job better, and they're worth more and capable of doing more and doing different kinds of freight and affording that kind of flexibility to the company, rather than viewing them as an asset, they would rather view us as a liability and treat us as such, and plays into their own detriment. So you know, that it's a self-defeating goal because you're
Right. And
not.
it
So
also plays into this like driver retention problem, right? They call it a shortage. We all know it's a retention problem. It's a
yeah,
circus. And you know, I think part of the reason that this part of the reason this attitude has been able to go on for as long as it has, right? Because all of this stuff is interconnected. The liability approach, the viewing us in that way, is only possible because it's so easy to replace us. And it's only easy to replace us because
they've lowered the standard.
the government lowers standards, they put automatic transmissions in the trucks, the government pays for people to go to truck driving school. And if they can't get that, then we get the like in-sourced labor and oh, you can just get a visa and come to America and be a truck driver because we don't have enough truck drivers, which is a lie. There's plenty of us around. Everybody just ends up
Yeah.
quitting. So before they started insourcing people at scale, it was all based on government paying for the training to keep the driver churn going, right? So this liability thing is built on the retention problem. The retention problem is financed by the taxpayer. So like this whole thing is just always coming back to like the
Stealth
government.
corporate welfare.
Yeah, the government having its ass in,
It's
up
corporate
our ass.
socialism, is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So like, many people will, politically they'll see everything is that, oh, we're moving into this different age of capitalism. This is just capitalism. This is how it works. And, well, when it's not capitalism if the working class are mitigated against at every wink and turn, no matter what the profession. And it becomes about the stealth corporate welfare that then turns into corporate socialism, where it's just to benefit the managerial class and above. And that's what it is until they, and then the managerial class, the middle management side, eventually they're going to understand the automation is going to replace them too, and so on and so forth. Before there's, you're looking 200 years from now, there isn't even a job, and now they have no reason to keep humans around.
Well, this is it. Like one of the things I'm trying to figure out here, and I've got a friend named Oliver, and he wrote a really interesting article about this. I'm going to send it to you guys when we get off here, and I'll link it in the show notes for other people.
Yeah.
There's been lots of talk about UBI. That Andrew Yang guy did an interview with Rogan in 2019 and talked about the fourth industrial revolution, and some of the sort
Yeah.
of like deeper heads about this have discussed that. But the problem is like the UBI is only possible by taking the skim off the top of someone, kind of like taxes or shareholder returns. There's got to be some excess value being produced, right? And what I think is going to end up happening is when they automate so many jobs away and there's just so few people working, and all of the excess value is only like because they're going to be able to like outcompete each other and continue the sort of like price down, the downward pressure on prices. um where's the money going to come from for UBI? Like they claim they're going to have to pay us all
Right.
off if they're going to unemploy us, but sooner or later, they're going to have price pressure going down because the robots and the efficiencies and all that. Then they're all these companies are competing with each other, so price goes down. Then there's less people with money. It's not like they're just going to be like ladling out enough money for us all to be rich on UBI. So the sort of the logic and the arithmetic of this whole project just stops working after a while, right? Like where's the long-term thinking about this? And I'm just not seeing it anywhere. If there's any
Yeah.
listener, if there's anybody out there that's got like some recommendations to me and Paulette and Mitchell and anyone else who's listening to this about like
Yes. I
who's
got I got some answers.
who's doing the long-term thinking about this and what are their answers? Are they any good or are they just pulling shit out of their ass? Like, what do you got, Mitchell?
A lot of your answers, Catherine Austin Fitts. Tucker Carlson has been interviewing her a lot lately, and she has some older interviews, and she talks about the new dawn of the financial systems, that it will there will be two separate tiers in society. Basically, it comes down to the haves and the have-nots. So the working class will be have-nots, and they will be on a social credit score system, a complete crypto. And the big banks will kind of have their own centralized currencies and the crypto market, and they'll compete against each other. And based upon how they view that we're interacting in society and going along with their plan, will gauge how we are rated socially and what we are going to be allowed based upon the figments of their imagination and their policy guidelines, their community policy guidelines and things of that nature. So it won't really be based off of the typical system that we know in economics. It'll be based off of how they view that we're fitting into their Orwellian agenda. So, if you're a good citizen and you're not committing all that wrong think out there and committing pre-crimes and such, you'll be allotted whatever you want. And
so, in other words, I'm going to be a beggar
know,
on the streets. That's what you're saying.
Essentially, because if yeah,
because
right,
it's going to be
right,
nothing. It's going to be nothing but wrong think and not fitting in from me.
right, exactly. Myself also, because we're critical thinkers, and I think most people just kind of want to go along with it, and they're so focused on just trying to survive because they've forgotten what thriving even means. People just are conditioned socially to this, and it's progressive. And this is she talks about that and how that then the actual like resource based monetary system for the rich, that'll be based off the resources so they can continue to compete against each other, like what you were saying. The deviation from that, and what people don't realize, is that there is a whole separate financial system we can deviate from. I reference a lot of it in my content, called the gold back system. There's already, at the end of this year, there's going to be 8 states that are going to accept it, and there are multiple states accepting specie specie legal tender, as what they call it, is legal talk for basically going back to a real resource, a gold and silver back precious metal back system, which is what we need to do. And it can have both systems of digital and physical. And it does. It has a full way of that we could actually separate from this Federal Reserve central bank controlled system. Like I said, you go and a lot of the big people aren't really talking about it. It's kind of an underground movement, very constitutionalist moved. But what you're talking about, Catherine Austin Fitts has a lot of the answers in her interviews, and they're unwinding a lot of that, as well as his interviews with Alex Jones, and how all these different conspiracy theories, which once were thought that, are turning out to be the truth, like we've been telling people all along. So
right. Well, I'll check out Ms. Fitz. Paulette, what do you think about this? Like, is anybody at Hirschbach going like, okay, cool. What are you gonna pay me to just be a yard jockey? How much longer till we're all unemployed?
Well, the overall thing, I get when I tell drivers, to look it up, to Google, what's going on with Hirschbach and Aurora. I think probably a good 80% don't even bother. And then, you've got a lot of these guys that, oh, it's not going to happen in my lifetime. This is 10, 30 years down the road. I'm not going to have to worry about this. And I'm like, no. We're talking 3 to 5 years.
It's here now. I used to be, when I first started looking into this stuff, and I first heard Andrew Yang, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be 15, 20 years out. And I'm like, I've had to correct that. It's here, it's operating. And it's just a matter of like the people
Absolutely.
using it, convincing the government to continue letting them do it. And pretty soon, most of trucking will be driver out.
Right.
And I was, like I said, I know this AI specialist pretty well. And she actually teaches at a college. She teaches AI ethics. And she was telling me, I said, so what's the odds of, these trucks getting hijacked or, cyber attacked or whatever? And she goes, oh, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. They will be hacked. And she goes, they can be used for like Robin Hood purposes, where they take the truckload, like it, into the inner city and give the food away or the whatever's on the truck. Could be used, hijacked and go to, like the black market, where guys are selling, stereos out of their trunk of their car. Or, they could hijack a truck and fill it full of, explosives or something and use it for nefarious purposes.
Right. Well, that's a good
absolutely.
point. That's a good point. As far as the nefarious purposes go, it's like we're already seeing that. I mean,
Yeah.
The insourced labor who have a very, unfortunate correlation with getting in collisions. We've seen a couple of these guys drive right into stop traffic and not even slow down. Some people are starting to scratch their heads and going, is this like a unspoken attack from somebody? As far as the someone hacking an autonomous truck and then stealing it, I mean, the freight fraud's already through the roof. Cargo theft. I'm interviewing a guy tomorrow, the gentleman behind the company Freight Validate, Dale Prax, about this very question. And as far as robbing these trucks, like there's already cartels like shaking down trucks along the border. We've all seen the videos of stalled trains where in Chicago and Los Angeles, everybody breaks in. Oh, let's go hit up this a train yard, and there's a bunch of intermodal containers, and they just pop the back doors open and whatever's there is there. Or they have inside information about a particular container number that's got TVs in it or whatever,
Yeah.
Fraud and thievery have always been with us, and they will always be with us. It's just a matter of how they manipulate the system to get the robot truck to drive where they want it, so their boys are there waiting for it,
right. And then on the other side of it, like the complete weaponization, our great friend, mutual friend Mike Lombard, he said it best: the next 9/11 will not require a driver or pilot. And so,
no, that's the scary part. I mean, we're already seeing that in Russia with drones. I mean, look, anybody that's on the internet has seen enough drone murder porn from Russia and Ukraine. It's only a matter of time before someone hacks a truck and then drives it into a crowd of people or something, right? I don't know that, necessarily CEO guy from Hirschbach or Aurora are, caring about this. Maybe they're thinking about it. I mean, I tried to read through that Aurora presentation, there's sort of announcements and all the details and talking about safety and hacking, and they're trying to address this stuff, but you can only try and prevent so many things. You can only do so many contingencies, but sooner or later, someone's going to figure a way to break into them,
My dad had a unique saying, I grew up, in a small town, and we never locked our door. To this day, my mother's door is unlocked. You can walk right in her house. And my dad always said, the locked door just keeps an honest person honest. And that's, kind of what this is. The honest person is going to, not try to hijack stuff or hack stuff. It's going to be the dishonest person.
Right. I will be very honest when I see an Aurora truck going down the highway and I throw a bunch of caltrops in front of it. I mean,
Well, okay. So I read this article a few months ago, and it was about cars. And they were talking about the automatic brakes in cars. And I think it was Mazda, Subaru, and I want to say either Honda or Toyota. And they put the safety vests on these crash dummies and put them out in front of the cars. Every one of those cars did not see, at different speeds, did not see the dummies and smashed right into them. And as truckers, we get out of the truck, we're supposed to put the high-vis vests on so we can be seen. And if these automatic things can't see the vests, I talked to my AI lady, right? And she was like, well, it's because what happens is that reflective strips on that vest just reflect it back to the camera, and the camera doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, man, yellow
Yeah.
vest, the reflective vest. I want to go on a big long rant about that one day, but I don't know that this show is the right venue for that. You guys have been so generous with your time and patient, and this back and forth is great. So I'm not going to ruin it with a gourd rant. Another time, but this is all, the fact that like the yellow vest won't save you from the robot trucks is just icing on the cake for a bunch of other stuff I think about those vests.
It is.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, like I said, the
yeah.
study was on cars, but I mean, it's gotta, there's gotta be some similarities or correlation.
Right. Well, it depends on the system. So there's LiDAR, radar, they've got camera systems. And again, they have these systems going on your trucks and having you guys train the truck how to behave. Um,
Right.
I'm I don't know. I'm going to sound like a bit of a Luddite here, or maybe a bit of a, worry wart, but I I don't drive that much anymore, to be quite honest. I got laid off from my last driving job in 2023, and I haven't turned a wheel since. I got little kids at home right now, and I'm sort of, being a house dad and all that, and it's fine. But I want to go back on the road someday. But every time I'm on the highway now, between just the total downward spiral slop bottom of the barrel driving behavior I see out there, from just lack of training, and then insourcing all these people from other cultures that don't share America's unique driving culture. And that's a big thing nobody talks about, right? Because sort of
Yeah.
the spreadsheet brain fucking idiots that want to replace us with robots just believe us all to be interchangeable human slurry, and they don't understand that America has a unique driving culture that's different from other countries. And then when you just
Absolutely.
like let millions of people here from other countries that don't share that driving culture, give them licenses and let them loose on the road, we see what happened in Alabama the other day, and like in thousands of other incidents across the country, and vehicles large and small. I'm almost afraid to go back out on the road unless I'm actually in a big truck, man, because like you're just gonna get smoked, and then they're gonna turn these robot trucks loose on us. And I mean, but Aurora is telling everybody, oh, it's super safe, and Kodiak's gonna say the same thing. Oh, our trucks have been practicing out in the Permian Basin. We've got all these thousands of miles and hours of operation, and they're just fine. And then one day, one of those systems is gonna spurg out. There's gonna be a failure, and I don't want to be the person in front of it. Do you?
No, no, absolutely
No,
not. Absolutely not. And I know one of the major ways, and this is from more research and talking with other minds like ours and the advocacy side. And one of the things, like, as they get closer to that where they want to take away the over the road, there is always the thing that they could reinstitute that the interstate systems are used for commerce and military only. And being that so many of these newer vehicles are electronically controlled, everything is drive by wire, they can be eventually they can program out the option for a vehicle to even be allowed to turn onto a freeway. And so there's going to be that push as they get closer to it, you know. We mentioned in here in this discussion about how it's not as far off as everybody thinks. We've got the next 5 years to put enough resistance towards it that it keeps getting pushed down the road, kind of like what happened with the speed limiters, right? If we don't do anything and we keep letting them progress, it's going to be the next 10 to 15 years. And then we're going to be seeing that whole like, oh, now all of a sudden, unless you're in a autonomous vehicle being transported as a passenger, you're not even going to be allowed to be on the highway
Right,
anymore.
yeah. So, cultural artifact. We mentioned 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's a song by the Canadian progressive rock band Rush,
Yep.
back in the day called,
2112.
yeah. There's that, and then there's a song called Red Bacheta, which
Mhm.
is you should go listen to it. Everybody, I might actually try and steal it and like, put it on as bumper music at the end and see how long
There you
till
go.
it gets
I know
taken
what you're
down
talking about.
for copyright infringement. But anyway, it's the lyrics, the sort of story in the song is about this guy that like lives in a city and he escapes to his uncle's place out in the countryside, and his uncle's got this old Italian sports car hiding in the barn, and then Buddy like goes and starts driving it around, and he's getting chased by air cars and cops in the sky, and everything's been banned, like you're not allowed to drive, like it's coming true, man. Like,
Yeah, exactly. They're gonna take the option to drive right out of it, which you look at like the classic things that made America so great, like the era of the 50s and 60s, that established and really brought deep root to that driving culture and that traveling across, what a beautiful nation we do have that us truck drivers see. I mean, right now I'm out in I mean, I'm out by Moab, You've been through this area before. It's one of the most beautiful parts of the country.
oh yeah, it's gorgeous.
And
Yep.
and the fact of it is that without that interstate system, if we were somehow not allowed, or that was granted by special permission by a person, a passenger transport vehicle that's autonomous, you know, now that's, you don't get to just, see that it's a privilege. You're removing that option, that made America so once well connected that then it'll be used to divide, which works into the smart city, or as Trump calls it, freedom city, mind thought.
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah, there's lots to consider there. So, Paulette, when we started recording here, you mentioned you were starting a night shift, and I want to be sensitive about when you got to get rolling here. Is there anything
Uh,
further you wanted to mention specifically about Hirschbach, or any more of your own thoughts on all this?
well, first of all, I don't have to grab my load, which is a half a mile away from me. I don't have to grab it till midnight. So central time. So we're still okay. Um, for time wise, I'm fine. But Hirschbach, they like to present and they tell everybody in all their marketing and all their nonsense, that we are for the driver, they spew this, I forget what the hell the back of their trucks say, their trailers. It says something about, they're driver oriented or some nonsense,
we're not
but
your
they're not.
typical company. We're not your typical trucking company. That's what you
Okay,
usually
yeah.
say.
Okay, see, you know more than I do. I don't pay attention. And and that's not true, because like I said, I know guys who've been with this company, for close to a decade or more, and now we're all going through this stuff with safety, which, as I said earlier, they're just, guys trying to watch their insurance rates, but they're cracking down on all of us for speeding. I mean, everybody's getting in trouble for speeding here lately, and it's just crazy.
When you
They're
say
they're
speeding, like on the interstate or on two-lane roads where it's a bit more of a sensitive issue?
interstate. Okay, so I get nailed all the time for speeding. I just kind of I've told safety off. They don't even call me anymore because I've chewed them out. But like going through Gary, Indiana, Chicago, Atlanta, Indianapolis, St. Louis, you don't do 55. You'll get run over. You just will. You'll have trucks run you over or cars run you over. I'm like, I'm not doing the speed limit through these cities.
Right. So they've got the GPS system that's tracking your truck is overlaid with like it knows the speed limit everywhere you are, and then they give you shit for not following it.
Yep. In fact, Hirschbach wants you to go 3 to 5 miles below the speed limit.
I'm a big fan of driving slow myself, but like I don't want to force other people. Other people have their own driving habits, schedules, peculiarities, what they're gonna do, their own priorities. It's fine. I'm not a
Mhm.
speed limiter guy. I don't tell other people how to drive. I do drive slow. I don't think I would have this problem with these guys, but again, I am offended that my professionalism as an operator, as yours is being impinged upon, and like they're sowing distrust in your own abilities and in your own professional operational capabilities to keep telling you how fast you can friggin' drive.
Yeah.
Right. Well, see, but then you got things like, right outside of Nashville, when you're driving, they have variable speed limits. On I-24. I mean, you'll be going along and all of a sudden the speed limit's 55, then it's 45, then it's 65, and it just constantly changes. So how does, the GPS technology update that fast is, that they can keep up with that. And, like right now, for the last week, my dispatcher's been running me out in the West. And I talked to him the other day and I was joking with him. I said, you sent me out West so I can't speed because I'm governed at 70 miles an hour. So you put me out here in Nebraska and Wyoming where the speed limit is 80, so I can't speed at all.
Yeah. You're getting run over by almost everybody.
I could just imagine my very slow ass being in Nebraska or Wyoming, because I'm very happy to sit on 60 mile an hour and just put along. I imagine I'm going to annoy a lot of people if I did that out west these days.
There's something to be said for efficiency and courtesy, and how those two things together equal real safety. Most of the experienced drivers I come across that have that mentality end up over time driving slower and slower, and yet still getting there 5 minutes before the fast guy. So there's like a tortoise and the hare kind of mentality to the whole safety out here on the road, from what I'm coming to find, as I also accrue that wisdom of professionalism and being a driver and developing.
The speed thing too is, time, speed. The big one is about time. And here's another thing, and then, this touches on things we're talking about, is like one of the major issues that's been a problem in trucking since forever, since before any of us were born, is detention and the drag on, trucking capacity in particular and in total. Another guy I'm trying to get on the podcast whose work I've cited before is this dude named David Carell. He's a researcher at MIT. They have a little subdivision called MIT Freight Labs. I was finally put in touch with him here a few weeks ago, and I'm trying to get him on the podcast, but he was working for US DOT. Then Trump came along and he lost his job. Then he got rehired and all the confusion. And now he's not working for them again, and he's going to work somewhere else. And he's not sure what he can say. And I'm just, here's another problem, right? Like, you get these people, the further up the food chain you go, the more people are nervous about what they can say, right? And when I was first talking to him, I'm like, man, dude, like, USDOT is not going to get mad at you if you talk to me about your research on capacity, time efficiency, and truck drivers' time. Why would DOT get mad at you? But I guess, I don't know. What do I know? I don't circulate in those altitudes with all the people way up there. But it just strikes me that, like, our society is that retarded that, like, these people have to worry about discussing something as, like, banal and fucking boring to anybody outside of, like, the 100 people that listen to this podcast, about, like, time stuff. But anyway, pardon the rant.
No, you're good.
So we spend an awful lot of time waiting at docks, waiting to get unloaded, waiting for this, waiting for that. Some areas of trucking, and that's worse than others. And I've always tried to avoid, reefer and van freight, because your time gets wasted all the time, right?
Yeah, and flatbed life.
Yeah,
well, some of us are too old for flatbedding now. Okay.
Yeah.
No way I could throw a tarp or a chain.
So trucks cost a lot of money, right? A truck is a capacity unit. It's a capacity. It's a piece of technology that's part of the whole, freight world capacity, right? And one of the things they're trying to sell the autonomous trucks to people is, well, an autonomous truck doesn't have to sleep, doesn't have to pull over to go to the bathroom, doesn't have to hang out at the truck stop and eat. It can just go, go, go. And I mean, they're right about that. That's correct. However, let's say for a minute that they've gotten so far ahead with their technology that they don't even have us doing local P&D. It's just let's just, for sake of argument, let's pretend that all trucks are all automated, right? No more humans. And then they run into DCs, they run into Walmart, they run into reefer warehouses. And then your autonomous truck that costs 400 grand because the technology is really expensive is just sitting there waiting to get unloaded or unloaded. And your capacity is getting held up. I'm sure they're going to figure out like trailer swapping and trailer pools, and they'll figure this stuff out eventually. But tell me, Paulette, what's Hirschbach's take on detention? Like, how do you guys get paid for it at all? Do they have customers? Okay. Do they have enough of a trailer pool you guys could just do drop and hook most of the time? Like, how's that work?
Okay, so every department is different. Like I said, they have so many different dedicated accounts, and then they have OTR. A lot of times, like I'm on a Tyson account, I do drop and hook a lot, but I also do live loads and live unloads. Well, here's the thing. They have a guaranteed minimum weekly pay, okay? And it's a sliding scale. Every account, it's a different amount of money. So because I get a guaranteed every Friday, I do not get detention. I don't get breakdown. I don't get layover. None of that. That's what my guarantee covers. Now, the OTR guys, I do know, get detention after 2 hours, but they don't get it until the customer pays Hirschbach. So you could be sitting at the dock for 4 hours today, and you might not see it for 30 or 45 days, which means you got to keep track of it. You have to keep paying attention and make sure you got paid for that detention.
This whole 2 hours on the house thing you don't get paid is just madness to me, and also offensive, because it's like your time is just being given away for nothing. That's got to end. That's nonsense. It's completely unacceptable.
When I first started at Hirschbach, I was given a master list of detention rates by another driver. So it's a couple years old. But I have an Excel spreadsheet that shows how much how much Hirschbach gets for detention at every customer. And when it starts, if it starts after an hour, if it starts as soon as you hit the dock, after 2 hours. But then that's not what the driver gets. And I know, I think the OTR guys get a percentage of the detention, like 65%, I think, or something like that. They don't even get the full rate. And then the lease purchase guys, they get their fuel for 99 cents a gallon, so they don't even get a fuel surcharge. They just pay 99 cents a gallon for the fuel. And Hirschbach keeps the fuel surcharge.
That's pretty cheap.
Yep. But, it's a lease purchase program, and, we all know how those work.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, no.
Yeah, you might be paying 99 cents a gallon for the fuel, but you're getting screwed in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. You're probably only getting $1.40 a mile or something stupid. Yeah, no, the Hirschbach's one of these joints that I would never work. I've been around the business long enough to know that I would never, most of the trucking industry doesn't deserve me, and they probably would never hire me anyway. So, I'm good with that. I'm just
it's best to live on the edge.
Oh my God, it's so bad. But again, the job itself, the physical act of driving, the job is nice. It's good. You get to see the country. There's lots to speak for it. It can be better, But instead of trying to fix all this crap about detention or, treating drivers like garbage, they just make it worse and worse and worse to justify this imposition of automation. I think I've said that already. I'm starting to repeat myself, which means I should probably try and wind the show down, unless you guys have something else to offer.
No, I think it's been a great show. I think we touched on a lot of really important points, and I think it's to further the conversation, and it's good to just, like I said, keep it going, and making sure that whoever is still listening to this podcast at this point, share it with another driver that's struggling with where they're wondering where this career is going to go, and um we have to keep talking about it, and we have to get loud about it. And it's the same way that we're going to be able to make changes to it, just like we did with the ELP. We have to get loud about it. And that's the main goal, is getting loud about it and addressing it until these companies come up with forthright answers, not ones where they tell us in their corporate speak and then say, oh, well, we actually did tell you, and because you didn't do anything about it, your acquiescence has spoken for you. It's not true, where it's all in progression. And so we have to keep it on the forefront and keep our attention on it. Like I says, there's aspects of the current administration that I think are going to be good for benefiting trucking, but I think there's also a non-beneficial side to their possible agenda. So it's about keeping the conversation moving forward until we get them to have the more direct conversation with the trucking community.
Right. Paulette?
I absolutely agree with Mitchell. I mean, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And, the more that we can get this out there, and the more that we can get people to understand that, the government and corporate America generally, when they tell you something is for public safety, that means more of your rights or your freedoms are being taken away.
Always. Yep. It's always a smokescreen for making your life worse.
Yeah. And so we need to get people, to start doing, rants on social media, and trying to get a hold of their Congress people and saying, hey, we need to knock this nonsense off.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is nobody. I mean, you could probably poll 100 different Americans from different parts of the country and say, who's your senator, and they'll probably look at you and go
Yeah. So
Right.
reading suggestion for you too. I've been wanted to tell you guys about this book, by a guy from not too far from where I live. I'm kind of outside Ithaca, New York here, and this dude was a professor at Cornell, and he also just happens to be from here. His name is Kirkpatrick Sale, and the book is the book is called Rebels Against the Future, and
I've heard of it.
It's a sort of overview historical analysis of the Luddites, who were garment workers in the early 19th century in northern England, who were slowly replaced with steam-driven looms. And then there was a sort of like
I've heard this story before.
There was a rebellion against it, led by this sort of guy, or an idea, or a myth, I can't remember, his King Ned Ludd, and they were forever remembered as being Luddites, but history has not been kind to that term, and so Luddite has become like a slur, or like a dismissive, like, oh, you're just anti-technology, you're anti-progress, you're just a reactionary. But this guy's book, the sort of main point of it is that it's not that they were anti-technology or anti-progress, they were anti their craft and their livelihoods being taken away from them, right?
Yeah,
And
dehumanized.
Yeah, dehumanized, de-skilled, and like the echoes from the garment workers facing steam technology to now, like bang bang, like the echoes are just going back and forth. So anyway,
yes,
highly recommend you guys read that book. Anybody who's interested in this stuff, check it out.
Absolutely.
You have some kind of a TikTok channel, don't you, Mitchell?
Yeah, I have my based upon the truck that I'm driving, and I kind of took upon like as like a little of a second identity because it started getting me more. It started getting more eyeballs on me because it kind of catches the tongue right. Truxedo. So I literally drive a Peterbilt that looks like it's wearing a it's white and black white or black with white stripes. It kind of looks like it's wearing a tuxedo.
All
So,
right.
you know, it and then I just my main page focuses on a lot of constitutional matters. And I use the word infrastructure because I truly view that a lot of our issues that we're encountering when it comes to how technology and how the future is kind of looming over us, this doom and danger that we feel, is because we are not participating in the controlling infrastructures that are deciding our futures. So that's where it all boils down to is that if we don't like their infrastructure, we have to find ways to rewrite our own. And a big part of that inspires a lot of my work is based off of some of the founding documents like the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence that, you know, if you find your government oppressing, it is not just your right, it is your duty to alter and abolish. And so my channel and all my blatherings kind of focuses that attention on, you know, hey, your rights are being abused. This is why they're being abused underneath the guise of commercial, because that's what they're doing. Because we're such a heavily commercialized society, they're using consumer law, maritime law to override because we choose to live in this type of society. We have a semblance of choice, rather. So we have to begin to think about things differently and how, if we want to truly rebel, we have to choose to pick alternative infrastructures in every which way of our society and take away that control. And so one of the biggest ones that like I mentioned earlier about the financial, I'm a big proprietor of getting us back to a precious metal based currency system that isn't controlled by them.
I think I
So,
think I think you guys are called gold bugs.
yep. Yep,
I'm just
absolutely.
I'm not trying to be derogatory. Like
No, absolutely not. So,
I hung around the libertarian economics world for long enough to know all about that stuff.
yep.
Paulette, where can people find you?
You
Do you want to
can't.
be? Do you don't want to be found? Great.
Actually, I have no social media accounts.
Oh, good, fantastic. You're the real Luddite here. Good for you.
Yeah, no, I have
You did for a while, but no more.
well, I did for yeah, years ago I had a Facebook probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I got rid of it. And
Yeah,
then
me too.
I had a TikTok for a little bit, but then I had to stop using that because it just got to be too many creeps out there, I guess, you know.
Yeah, they're around.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't handle it. So
It's funny, it's funny touching on that subject. It was funny when I first started working with Paulette on the advocacy issues. I was struggling against the system to get my messages out there and advocacy to get out to the drivers and inform them. But she had no problem when her feet and legs were up over the steering wheel on a video of her TikTok, got like umpteen freaking views, you know?
that's the sad thing. It was just like a picture of my feet on the steering wheel, you know, and looking
Yeah.
out through the windshield, going, waiting for my load or whatever it was. And yeah, I got like a gazillion, and then all the creeps came out of the woodwork. It got
Right.
really bad.
All right, so Mitchell, you're at Truxedo on TikTok.
Yep. Truck XEDO.
All right,
So,
and Paulette doesn't want to be found, which is fine. One of my previous guests had to stay anonymous because of the sensitivity of the subject and her physical proximity to some of the people we were talking about. So, all right, well, hey, thanks very much for coming out. I will. Can I share links to the stuff you guys sent me just for other people to
Absolutely.
watch?
yeah,
Right.
go right ahead.
And you're quitting Hirschbach next week, Paulette. So
Monday is my last day with them, so
right. Yeah, this won't be out before then. This will probably be another week or two before. I got a whole backlog of stuff, and I'm busy as shit. I'm trying to write a book, so.
Yep. Can't wait for it.
I mean, either I can't wait. I can't wait for it to be done so I can have my life back.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thanks very much for joining the show. I really appreciate your guys' time and the intel on the Hirschbach Aurora deal, and all of your guys' good observations and thoughts on things. And way of the road.